G'day guys, just a bit of a recap here on hip release. So the idea with this video is to get a bit of freedom and release some tension out of the hip joint. There are a lot of muscles that sit in the hip joint. I've got my friend Bones here, Indiana Bones. I'm going to be pointing to this area here to illustrate just the location that we want to be working on. Now, what I've got here is a fairly firm rubber ball. This is kind of like the firmness of probably a hockey ball, maybe slightly softer. It's got a little bit of give, but it's fairly solid. And that's my favorite ball for this release work. You can use spiky balls if you want to, but I would recommend this even over and above a foam roller. If a foam roller is too big and doesn't get into specific spots, this will get into specific spots for you. So back to bones, what we're doing is we're trying to release some of the muscles in that hip joint, specifically the ones that go from the sacrum out to the greater trochanter. So that's that bony outside bit that you can feel on your hip. So that runs from here. So this is the greater trochanter, this bony bit on the outside here, and it runs across all the way to the sacrum here. So that's where the tailbone sits. So there are a number of muscles that work in there. Well, one of the key ones in there is piriformis. You may have heard of piriformis. And why that one's such a key player is because the sciatic nerve runs right next to that piriformis. So if that muscle's tight, maybe inflamed, not in a happy state, then that could affect the sciatic nerve and that could affect pain down that leg. So if we can release it and some of the other muscles around that piriformis, then we're going to have a much nicer feeling and more freedom of movement through this hip when we move that hip either into flexion out the front or even into extension out the back. So we will get straight into that right now. So what we're going to do is have a feel of what's going on now. No point in doing any intervention if you don't know what it feels like before you do it. So we'll do a little sit and reach, and then we'll do another one at the end. And then we'll know whether it's the same as it was, better than it was, or worse than it was. So here's your sit and reach. It looks like a squat, but you're going to reach out with your hands in front. So I'm going to chop my head off here and do it without the head. You don't need that. So sit down into a squat, reach your arms out in front of you, just go as far as you're comfortable, and just tune into your hips as you do that. How does it feel? So drop down, come back up, maybe a couple of times, get a sense of what's going on there, the amount of freedom that you've got in those hips. And just bear that in mind as you do it nice and slow, and then we'll come down and have a little play with the ball. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the ball into that space that I just pointed to on bones. So you need to do this, if you do this on the floor, you need to do it with your arms underneath your shoulders so that you can take body weight out of it. Because what we don't want to be doing is ramming that ball into your glutes and having lots of pain screaming through your pelvis. So as I'm rolling around and trying to trace that pathway from the outside hip through to the piriformis, through to the sacrum, I'm finding a whole bunch of stuff in there that's quite interesting. So roll around. Because this ball's nice and firm, it will go through that glute max, the big muscle on the outside, and you'll hopefully start to feel what's going on underneath. So you might feel like you've got some bungee cords hanging around in there. If you do, and your ball is clicking over that bungee cord, see if you can pause on the cord. Pause for a moment, stop moving. Breathe for a moment. A couple of nice, long, slow out breaths. Torque that muscle down so that you're asking it to reduce its level of activity. You're inhibiting those muscles that may be overactive back down to a more normal level. Go tracing again with your ball. If that's worked, go tracing. If not, stay on the cordy bits until you feel like there's some release. That's what we're here for. We want some release, and we want to tone down anything that's been working too hard or working harder than it should, doing more than its fair share, which can happen if others are doing less than their fair share. In other words, we've got bad firing patterns. We're using the wrong muscles regularly, and that means they start to become overused. And that's when the imbalances come, and that's when we can have potential injuries or overuse, as in things start to wear out. And that can be muscles or that can be joints. I'm going to have a break on that hip. I'm going to switch to the other side. That was my right. We're going left now. Notice I'm lengthening the leg that I'm working on the hip. So that leg is as relaxed as possible rather than up here tense. So straight leg, starting to trace that ball again from the sacrum across to the outside hip, looking for chordy bits, pushing into my hands so that I'm not getting screaming pain. We want no more than about a 5 out of 10. If 10 was agony, 5 would be tolerable. An 8 will be too much. A 7 will probably still be too much. 6 as a possible. We want low levels. We don't want pain. Otherwise, the brain will send pain signals, and that will go against what we're trying to do and get that release of the tissues in and around that hip. Okay. Found one. I'm going in. A little bit of release, breath. Just get that brain muscle connection. So tune into where the ball is. That's your cue. That helps the brain find the muscle. And then you can torque that muscle down like we did on the other hip. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I hope you've got the idea. You know what you're doing. Just found one more, so I'm just going in. Oh. That's an interesting one. And then we're going to do our sit and reach again. So we want to do that same movement. That's our measure. What have we done? Has it made a difference? Can we walk away saying, yes, that was a positive impact, as opposed to a waste of time? All right, I'm releasing that now. Ball down there. Quick sit and reach, and I will sign off. So set yourself up again. Do the same movement. How does it feel? And for me, that just feels so much freer through those hips. One more. I feel like I can get more depth and the quality of the movement is better. So give that a go. If you haven't got that sort of ball, try a tennis ball. If you haven't got a tennis ball, just improvise. Find a golf ball. You'll need to just push out of it a little bit more. Hopefully that helps those hips. Let me know how you get on. Leave a message below.